Okay, welcome to another episode of Panakal, podcast for geeks, a show about good friends hanging out, talking about things we all love. Y'all know my co-host. I got it right. Yep, I
know you did.
Andrew
I saw
Sides.
you pause
I was
because you were like,
yes.
"Did I get it or not?"
I don't.
That was smooth.
Thank you. Minus the fact I admitted I may not have gotten it right. My co-host is Andrew Sides, as you guys all know, and our guest today is Carly Milligan, who we're going to do an episode. We're going to start out by talking about Dragon Con 2023. Because there's some new stuff, some old stuff, some clusterfucks. It was Carly's first time, so I thought it'd be perfect to have her on as a guest to talk about like my first drag. Wow, the screen just flipped. Interesting. It just flipped Andrew and me while I was talking.
Oh, trippy.
I am the captain now.
Yeah, you think you are, but so like what was I gonna say? Is my first time at Dragon Con, I believe, was 2016.
Okay.
Really? Like I thought you were earlier. To be honest, I didn't realize it was
that could have.
recent.
I think it's 2016. There's an easy way to figure this out. Is just look. Well, whatever. I'm not gonna look it up right now. I won an award my first time there. It was the same year Scott Fisher.
Oh, nice.
I believe it's it's the same year Scott Fisher was there, because that's how I became friends with Scott. He basically was one of the judges, so he voted for my piece. He found me in the show later to talk to me and basically be like, hey, you should sign up for Smart School, because I feel like there's a couple. Yeah, I didn't do it right away because it sounded like a pitch when he first said it, right? I was like, I don't know what Smart School is. I'm not really sure I want it, but as it turns out, it's one of the best things I ever did for myself, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, he was like, I see what you're trying to do, and there's specific ways to, like my early on, my stuff was a lot of Illustrator and pen tool. I even in his teachings, he will use Photoshop poster edge to create some of the shapes, and I hated that because it never really gave me the shapes I really wanted. But with his, he was like, what if you can do all this with lasso tool? And I was just like, I knew of the lasso tool, but I never touched it. So I was just like, what's the lasso tool? And
And now it's your go-to.
It's my main tool. Yep.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and that was the Dragon Con when there was an old person in charge there that nobody liked, and Harley got to come in when the nicer person is there.
Yeah, I heard from multiple people of like how much nicer Dragon Con is. So
Yeah.
I have no point of reference, but I still heard nightmare stories of what it used to be like under someone who was a bit of a narcissist from the sounds of it.
That's a good word to describe him. It was like when we all came back in after the pandemic, or actually it was the year before the pandemic. It was 2019 is when this guy got taken out. He got fired. Supposedly he quit, and supposedly he got fired. Nobody knows the actual story, but the new person that took over, she was so much easier to deal with, because when we had to register for Dragon Con back in the day in the art show, you had to submit 3 specific pieces. You weren't allowed to or 5, I think it was. You couldn't submit the same ones again every year. You couldn't take photographs in the art show. You had to submit stuff to the print shop, which doesn't exist anymore, and they would take a cut. It's a whole thing, and you had to like get a zebra code from them. It was very stressful because they wanted to know.
They had a whole thing that was like just a collection of prints from the artists.
So when you walk in, so when you walked in, there used to be like basically the area not too far from where you were, Carly, like just to your left. There was a whole area they blocked off, and basically it's for people. There were people that would come to the art show, didn't want to walk around the art shows. This is how they pitched it. They don't want to walk around the art show. They want to just buy some prints and get out. So they would walk into this print shop, and all of us had work in there, and they would just buy stuff off the wall and pay for it and just leave. And whatever cost we put on those prints, they would take a cut. I think it was 15%. And I was like, you didn't do any of the work,
Yeah, this is dumb. I don't like this.
Right, but you did it because you had to follow this guy's rules, right? Like basically, if you were like, I don't want to be in the print shop, he'd be like, fine, then you don't have to be in my show. Period. Okay. So I dealt with that from 2016 till 2018, and there was like I've been yelled at for trying to take a photo of my own booth. which is
Really?
I was across from the main so the where I was in the show this year, you saw my booth. That used to
Yeah.
be where the volunteers and all the people running the show sat there before. So they used to put the
Okay.
booths across from there, kind of where Naomi and stuff was, right? So like he would watch us all, and I tried to take a photo of my booth once, and I got in trouble for that. And I was like, "It's my own booth," and he's like, "You might take a photo of something behind you that might be NDA," and I was like, "Oh my god, all right."
Or if
So
someone has an NDA thing at a convention, that's
that's
fucking
their
dumb.
responsibility.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say
Yeah, I was gonna
that's
say they're
incredibly dumb if that's the case.
right,
displaying art when there's going to be thousands of people walking through who have not signed. Like,
right, because they
yeah,
had a
that's
gallery
their
wall too, right?
problem.
So like the gallery wall they had,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they used to give us all pinboard like our own little section gallery versus just one wall. We had our own like little subsection, and in there people would hang like NDA work, and you'd be like, "This is a bad idea." But he had like people, volunteers watching you. They would like walk up and be like, "You can't take photos," and I'd be like, "It's my own
Mm.
work." Like I couldn't even
Why
take a photo of my own gallery wall to like social media post about it, right? I'm just like,
this stuff is
it
like
was bad.
NDA? Like, why? I don't understand that. Like, if something's NDA, you don't show that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Bar none. Like, that is the rule. You just don't show it. What are you doing? Like,
So,
taking it to a convention, of God's sakes?
well, and then basically they got rid of this guy, and then the new person, we don't know anything about her other than she used to work the vendor hall, right? So we're like, okay, she's
Mm.
from that side of the board. So let's see what happens. Easiest person in the world to deal with. Like literally, I was like, what do I need to submit? And she was like, just go online and drop a link to your portfolio. Literally
Oh,
took me less than 5 minutes to submit to the art show, right? Like just to see if I got in. And
Mm.
then once I
what
got in,
was that your experience too, Carly? Like, it was just a
I
quick.
actually don't even remember what the submission process was. I remember I put it on my calendar. That's what I always do for all of these things, whether it's, Infected by Art, Gen Con, Dragon Con, like anytime there's a submission deadline, I put it on my calendar with a link to the
sure.
website that has the information on how to do it. So I just followed whatever the instructions were on Dragon Con's website for the art show submission. I will say it took a while to hear back.
Yeah, that's normal.
But I remember the submission. I don't remember it being like difficult or hard or
It's,
anything. So
so they had a little bit of a. It normally doesn't take as long as it did this year. Hey,
sorry.
that guy's gonna be live. Just kidding.
Yeah, he is.
His face didn't show up. He's all right. They usually are quicker about responding to let you know. This year felt like something. I don't know. I think what happened is they were trying to figure out a way to get like 20 more artists in or so. Here's the thing: nobody knows exactly what happened. But what I heard was they were trying to figure out a way to get 17 or 20 more artists into the art show. And
Oh.
while they were like changing the map around and changing the structure of it around, people had to wait, right? Because like people like we're all in this our own private Discord, and we all were talking where people were like, "I just heard back, I'm in," and then some of us didn't hear back for like 3 more weeks, right, or 4 more
Right.
weeks, and you were just patiently waiting. But it's like it's so much nicer than it used to be. Is all I'm gonna say. Like like, and there was no pressure. Like there was no print shop. The gallery wall is there if you want. Like so this year, when you were there, was the first time they put names on that wall. Like this is your wall. What used to
Hmm.
happen was people would walk in there, and like last year, people went in there and try to get in early so they can get like their choice
The
spot.
prime position. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And now
So
it's actually assigned out like how it should be
yeah,
instead of the
because I got in there
default.
early and I was like, I wanted to get this corner so I could see it from where I was standing. So I could be like, oh, someone's checking out my work, but I was on the other side, so I was just like, whatever. So I put my booth number on there and everything, and just let the universe
So
control that.
that gallery area, are they able to purchase art on
You
that
can,
galleries?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I usually just put prints up because in my head I'm like, you're trusting somebody to take it off the wall and bring it to you,
Mhm.
or that's usually how it works. It used to be the old gallery wall. It used to be people would take it off the wall and go to the register and pay for it, and they get a ticket. saying they paid for it, and again they would take a cut, and then those people sometimes would come over to you to say, "Hey, I bought it. I like it. Can you sign it? Whatever." Also, when we were making sales at the show, we had to give everybody. The old guy made us give everybody a receipt, and it was dumb. It was literally
Gosh.
like I had just a
Like a
receipt book, and I
paper
would just
receipt
write.
you had to do?
Yeah, so what I started doing since I bag and board everything, I would just
Uh-huh.
sign on the back of one of my prints because it's in a bag already. So I would just sign whatever it was, 3 prints, 1 playmat, sign my name, and like show him that because he wanted us to buy like print little receipt books, and I was like, what?
No.
Yeah. I've done post-it notes with just stuff on it, so it's like now it's a lot nicer, and I don't know.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was my experience was definitely again, this is my first year doing these
Sure.
bigger shows, so I have no point of reference, but I will say everything seemed pretty smooth and slick on my end. It seemed like a
Was your
great show.
was it pretty easy for you to did you get it on Wednesday or Thursday?
I got in on Thursday. Yeah,
Was
because they allowed it
Yep.
was 3 o'clock when they opened up
Yep.
set up for the art show. So yeah, I flew in on Thursday. Like my plane landed, I think a little after 3. So by the time I got to the show, I think it was closer to like 4 o'clock, 4:30,
Gotcha.
something like that.
But you had everything in
But
just suitcases, you said, right? That's
yeah, so
smart.
I pretty much went straight from the airport to the art show, got a start on the setup, left the 2 big suitcases at, just under my table at the art show, and then took my carry-on and backpack out to dinner and then back to the Airbnb. So, worked really well.
Nice.
Did you
Oh,
come to
cool.
dinner? You didn't come to dinner with us. I don't remember.
No, no, I went to dinner with you guys that first night at Gen Con, but
That's
Dragon
right.
Con, I don't think I went to dinner at all with your crew actually.
We
I
had
had like messaged Kat at one point. I'm like, I hope the show's going well.
it's because it's the Dragon Con's one of those shows where we have to make reservations for everything like weeks in advance.
I
Unfortunately,
believe
whereas
it.
Gen Con we can
Just
do
because
it.
it's so jam-packed.
It's so jammed. Like we're going to places that aren't even on the strip. We're like miles. We'll go like 2 miles away, 3 miles away. Like we have to take a lift or. Luckily, my assistants both had cars, so we would like Justin was able
Oh,
to jam
nice.
most of us into his car. But like the same crew that went out at Gen Con, right? Basically, but at Gen Con, a lot of stuff is we pick places that are walkable because we don't really. I mean, there's 1 or 2 times we drove somewhere, but it's just easier to make reservations for Gen Con. So if we were like, "Hey, we got 2 more people coming with us," and most people are in India are like, "Yeah, sure, whatever," But at
Yeah.
Atlanta, they're like, "Go fuck yourself."
Well, you know what I mean, it's been a minute since I've been to back to Atlanta, but I used to live there, and I remember
Okay.
the MARTA. I remember MARTA being frustrated. Like it's frustrating, like how close it is to being pretty good.
Yeah,
Like it gets you mostly there, but a lot of the stops along the way just take you to like parking lots for MARTA, and you're like, oh fuck,
I
I
don't
still
know
have to
what
take this.
MARTA
it's
is.
Oh,
their
sorry.
train
So
system.
MARTA is the
Okay.
Metro Atlanta Train Rail Authority, I think it was
So
called.
you could
Something
take
like
the
that.
MARTA
It's
from
it's a
the
monorail.
airport.
That
You could
is what
take
it
it
is. It's
from
a
the
fucking
airport.
monorail.
It is a monorail. And you could take it from the airport to my first driving con. I took it from the airport with my friend to the mall that's connected, I believe, to the
Yeah.
Hyatt is connected to like a mall that's connected to a bunch of other things. So the MARTA stopped there, and then we had to haul
It's
stuff up.
basically a giant. It's basically a giant plus sign. The north south. No, sorry, the north south runs all the way from Alpharetta down to, I think the north south is the one that you use to take to the airport. So I think it goes Alpharetta all the way down to the airport. And then east west basically is like perimeter to perimeter. I forget what those outlying neighborhoods are because it's not like
Sure.
Buckhead and the other one. But yeah, and they all basically meet around the mall, I think is like the epicenter. But it's coming from Orlando, where Orlando has zero public transportation to speak of outside of like a few bus routes. It was like something I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. But even still, it was kind of like I used to live like around Buford Highway or like kind of near there, if I remember right. And the nearest MARTA station for us, we would have to take a bus to get to it. And then from there, you'd hop on and you'd take it around. If it's any of the, like the downtown drop offs where it's like around near where Dragon Con is, or
Mm-hmm.
anything like around Peachtree kind of thing, like that's great because then you get off and you're like, oh, I could just walk around and get to wherever I need to from there. But the more outlying stations become more like
Right.
they're more catering to like suburban kind of thing, or like a person that's like
Right.
driving
It's
to that
almost for the
station.
commuters who will drive
Exactly.
to the station and then.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like that was my only frustration by the time I left that place. I was
But
like,
it's one of
man, I
those.
love the idea of that. I really would love it if they built up more around it.
Sure.
So each station was like an actual thing you could walk around to and enjoy it for what it was.
And you absolutely should not ride it if you don't know where you're going.
You know
I
what?
will say,
It's not that bad. The bus routes were the
Oh, the
more
buses are.
troublesome part.
I didn't like the buses at all.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I was going to say, I will say, just like comparing Indiana to Atlanta, since those are the two shows I did this year. Atlanta, like the vibe of Dragon Con was amazing. The
Mhm.
vibe of Atlanta, I don't know if it was just because of the hurricane or what it was, but it was, a lot of boarded up houses and that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. And I was like,
That
I don't
that
feel
might be
as
it.
safe just going and exploring as I did
That
like
might have
in
been the hurricane
Indiana.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah,
You went
the
exploring in
a
Indiana?
decent amount of it also had a lot of graffiti on it, which made me think it had been there for a while.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah, my friend lives in, I think they called it Cabbage Town, I believe,
Okay.
which
Sorry,
is
in
just
Atlanta?
in Atlanta. He lives like literally 2 miles from. So here's the funny thing about my friend. He lives 2 miles from the main Hyatt. The art show's in the Hyatt, right? It's in the like their
Uh-huh.
banquet hall or ballroom, and then the vendor hall is in the America Smart, which is literally a block and a half up from there. Um, he lives 2 miles from this area of Dragon Con, and he still stays at the Hyatt because him and his friends have been going to Dragon Con for 20. I think this is their 22nd year in a row.
And
So
Wow.
I was gonna say you wouldn't want to deal with the traffic going into there.
so they stayed
No.
Regardless.
there, and my buddy Skates and I, who drove in, stay at his condo, and I stayed way. I stayed at my first year at Dragon Con. I stayed at Marriott that was 5 miles away. My second
Uh-huh.
year, I stayed at this condo that was like a mile and a half away. Which is no, my second year I stayed. My next 2 years I stayed in hotels, which were literally up the block, and it was nice because I could walk to it. But it sucked
Yeah.
because Dragon Con never sleeps, right? So these people were up all hours of the night. I couldn't get
I
much
heard
rest.
about that.
Mm.
I didn't experience it since I was away in an Airbnb.
It's
But I
actually good
heard
for
that there
you.
were like raves and stuff just all
Yeah.
through the
Oh my
night and that
goodness.
it
I
gets
mean,
weirder and weirder as the night progresses. Like I heard stories from my table neighbors. I was like, that is wild. Like good for
oh, I
those
know who your
people.
neighbors.
I'm
Yeah.
so glad I went to sleep.
Well, my first year time at Dragon, I went to the Marriott across the street from the Hyatt where we were is like the party hotel. I guess it's like that middle area. It's just I don't know how to describe it other than like a petri dish of people. There's so many people in there, and they're all like
Uh-huh.
most of them are probably not exactly 100% healthy as far as I can tell, but they're boozing it up. But it's the best place to see all the cosplayers, and
The
it's a party,
cosplay
right?
was
So
amazing.
there's a DJ in there, so music's playing all night, and there's multiple levels. No matter what level you go on, there's music and people partying and cosplayers. So my first time there, I was like, this is fucking amazing. I've never been to a show
Yeah.
like this. And when I got home, I had the worst con crud I've ever had in my life.
Oh
Like
no.
104-degree temp. I was coughing up green shit. It was disgusting. So after that, I was like,
Gross.
I have never stepped foot back in the Marriott after that. Like my friend wanted our friend David Laraca and his friend wanted to go check it out once. I walked him to the entrance. I could hear the
Then
music, and I
said
was like,
bye.
"See you guys later." Yeah, I just left. And I was like, don't hang out with me anymore if you go in there. You know, like now it's like you should absolutely not go in there because COVID, you know. But a lot of artists went in there and hung out this year, and I saw a lot of them posting online how they got COVID. And I'm just like, you went into the craziest part of the show. You know, you might as well have been licking a doorknob. You know, like.
Well, and I don't know, that crazy part of the show, I've never been to a club. I've been to a few bars, and even that is like,
Yeah, it's like
I
information
don't know.
overload.
It's just it's too much sensory overload for me.
That's it. Yeah,
I
sensory overload.
loved getting to see all the cosplayers that I did see, just like walking into the art show
Yep.
and then the cosplayers coming through the art show. I've always seen cosplay at shows, but not like that. It was something else at Dragon Con. It was really
You
impressive.
should come to San Diego sometime.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like it's the one show I've been to that has the most insane cosplayers. Like, there's costumes
Even more
that
so
can't
than Dragon Con.
Dude, there's people that have costumes that can't even make it through the door, so they just hang around outside. There's a guy that was dressed up as Andrew. You'd like this, a giant Gundam, and like his wings would open up.
You know,
and
I've
stuff.
seen that.
Dude.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah.
I talked to him.
Mechanical.
Yeah,
they worked.
they were mechanic. He was a. I think he was some form of engineer. And he said, I said, how do you get through the door? He goes, I just chill out here. So he's got a day of going through the show, 2 days of going. The show's 4 days, right? So 2 days of hanging out, and then 2 days of basically chilling. He's got multiple costumes, but I think his friend was. There was videos of a guy dressed as Rhino. It was all over this year, and he bought his costume inside and then geared up, and it was huge. It was like 9 or 10 feet tall, and the head was so real you thought his head was up there, but it was actually in the chest. So it's kind of cool.
That's cool.
You'll see some elaborate cosplay there.
How long is Dragon Con? Is that 3 or 4 days?
4 days, Friday to.
4 days?
I think it should only be 3.
Friday
because
through Monday.
Yeah, Friday through Monday.
Oh wow! So
Monday is Labor Day. Well, here's the thing: they make us. We were there till 4,
5
on Monday. They should have shut it down at 4. They should actually just shut it down at like 2 because it's so dead on Monday because people are like going home.
Well, it's Labor Day.
It's Labor Day.
Yeah,
People
well, and that
go
was
home.
one I noticed that I was surprised. I got a lot more sales than I expected on Monday.
Yeah.
Because every other day, walking into the Hyatt, and the lobby is just this sea of people, and then I go in Monday, and there's like nobody there. There's a few people walking around, and I'm like, the show's still happening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like everybody's going home.
Yeah, you walk
on
into the
Monday,
Hyatt, it's just
so-
like it's like a ghost town, right? And you're like, why am I even here?
Yeah, Monday was weird, but the rest of the show is super busy. I didn't know they did a parade.
So you don't want to be outside for the
Yeah,
parade.
they
You
do a
want to be inside.
parade on, what is it, Saturday morning?
Saturday morning, yeah.
Yeah.
So since we're in the Hyatt, I always tell people if you really want to see the parade, either find a friend staying in the Hyatt so you can see it from the balcony, or what they do is they stream it. So my friends just watch it on TV.
Oh.
You could watch it on
I didn't know they
DragonCon.
streamed it.
They stream it on the channel. Or if you really, really want to watch it, since you're at the Hyatt already, once you're there and you're like, my stuff's here, I'm here, you could stand on the street and watch it, but it's just a parade. I mean, I don't know. It depends on... I watched it the first time again. I did all the first time stuff, and I was just like... But then, like, the mass of people move, and you're like, if you're on the wrong side of the road, you won't be able to get to where you have to go.
Yeah. The Hyatt, that's the... Is that the one that's the whalebone hotel? Like, where it looks like the inside of a rib cage?
No. Yes. That's the Hyatt.
Okay.
There were, I was going to say, there was a structure on the inside.
If you look up, it looks
kind of
goes up like
crazy.
that. They used that in a movie recently. I saw it and I thought, that's the Hyatt from Dragon
Yeah,
Con.
it's been in a couple movies.
It is a cool building. Yeah, like I walked in and I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's known as, like, I remember it being called the whalebone. Or like the whalebone.
Yeah, I would describe it as a whalebone. That's interesting.
Yeah, it feels like you're inside a rib cage kind of deal, which is like weird.
I think it's crazy is like my friends always try to get a room like on the 4th or 5th floor because after enough people show up, the elevators don't exist. Like you have to take stairs everywhere.
Oh Jesus!
And then one time I think he was on they were on like the 14th and they just took the stairs up and down.
Oh my
Get your
god.
steps in.
Dude, I've seen people and that's the other thing, like, common courtesy goes out the window for some people at this show because I've seen people in wheelchairs waiting for the elevator and other people just walking in front of them
No.
saying, man, I was here first. I'm like, bro, that person's handicapped.
Yeah.
And it's
Ugh.
like, do you want to pick a fight with this person or just, it's just like, it's rude.
That's just people in crowds.
Well,
Um.
I think the hotel should have people controlling it, right?
Oh yeah,
Has
absolutely.
some traffic control. If people are that rude about it, yeah,
Yeah.
they need some enforcers. I would hope humanity would be such that we would have courtesy and not need enforcers, but clearly they do need them.
Yep.
So
I was going to ask you,
Humanity
Carly,
has a way to surprise us.
did you have any originals at the show at all?
me,
Yes, you.
I had one drawing. That was the only original I had. I am
Really?
like out of it. Well, I'm not out anymore. I've got the EDO piece that went live yesterday and is my first EDO piece that didn't sell the first day it went up. So I still have that. But yeah, all my original paintings have gone in the last year. So I'm kind of
Gotcha.
empty on originals,
It's not bad.
which I mean, good problem to have.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, very good problem. So you had like mostly Princeton or
hmm
okay.
Yeah, so my offerings this year, prints, of course, because they're easy. We all do them.
Yep.
And then I was also testing out play mats and metals. And one of the metals, I actually have double-sided 2x6 bookmarks. And
Oh, you got them double
those didn't
sided?
do
I
as
didn't really.
well as I expected at Dragon Con, but they did pretty decently at Gen Con.
Yeah, I noticed
So
at Gen Con I can move my books fairly well, but at Dragon Con it's like people are like, books, ugh. Like, cool, bro.
That kills me. That's like the first thing I always look for at a table.
If an
Is
artist
like
has an
if
art
they
book
have
of
a
some
book,
sort, I'm like,
I'm
I want to
willing to
see
buy a
this.
book.
Yeah.
I did have someone ask if I had like a sketchbook, and I totally misunderstood the question at first. I'm like, I'm an artist, of course I have my sketchbook. It's right here. And he's like, no, like to buy. I'm like,
Right.
oh no, I do not have a printed bound collection of my work. He's like, darn, I'd really like one.
Bet you would.
Maybe next year.
You should bet.
Yeah,
I got all this other
that's
stuff you
that's
can buy,
usually my
man.
go-to thing. Like
Yeah.
I think
I have loads of art sketchbooks that I just whenever I went to conventions or met other artists and stuff, I try
Yep.
and
I
buy
mean,
them.
I've got a ton of artist books down there.
I don't have a ton of sketchbooks. Most of the books I have are the like fancy, bigger, heavy duty like art books. I mean, you can
So
see
that's the other
my
thing.
my copy of Alchemy
If you
in
come to San
front
Diego, there's
display.
a named Stuart Ing, and he sells
Mm,
um
my God,
his
he has
business
so
is
much cool shit.
it's just all art books. And I've shown like the this is not the thing I'm going to show today, but this is a book I picked. Like you'll find just random like I've never seen this book anywhere, and it's just a bunch of like
Mm.
drawings, right?
Stewarding
They're
is
amazing, and this is the kind of stuff you find
when
at Stewart. You'll spend like
yeah.
$500 there easily.
Ooh,
Stewart
dangerous.
Stewart was
Yes.
like the first introduction I had for like really good European comics. Like
Yep.
like before that, I really only knew like Asterix, Obelix, and like Tintin. And then
Good old
through
Tintin.
Stewart and Ing, I saw like a bunch of other like French and like
Yep.
other European artists, and I was like,
Oh
oh my
shoot,
God, this is awesome.
Yep.
you might know what it is. I've forgotten it. I stumbled across some French comic and the art was stunning and I wanted to read it and I never have. I never like picked it
Uh-oh.
up and now I don't know what it was. I want to say it was like
Do you remember
What
the
does
about
it
a
subject
look
matter?
doll or something.
A doll?
I just
Do you remember
remember
what it
being
looked like?
not well enough to describe it, well enough to recognize it if it popped up. But
I'll take a
I bet
look.
if
I
anyone
may
knows,
have
leave
an
in the
I feel
idea.
notes.
like this was like a renowned, like well-known comic.
It was
It,
about a doll. Wasn't it
maybe?
not Mobius? I don't think.
No, I don't think he did anything about dolls.
No, no, the style was not Mobius's style. Yeah,
Could
I
have been.
can't remember.
I'll I'll take a gander because
Okay, cool.
that was something I was really, yeah, like I went down like a deep European artist hole for a while
I
where I was
mean,
like, oh
most
my
of the
god, who
books
are
I
all these
found
people?
over there that I bought are from Europe because you can't find them here at all.
Mhm.
Like,
That
No, which
was
is why I've forgotten the one I'm now trying to describe is because I was like, that looks amazing. I want to read it. And then I couldn't
I mean, my
find it.
carry-on was I had 2 bags and my carry-on was stuffed, and I literally had to take my clothes and like compress them to make room for these books because I didn't want to check it right because I was scared if I checked this bag I'm gonna
Oh,
lose
because
all
they're
these.
heavy
They're
too.
heavy, and I also thought someone's gonna steal all my cool
Mm.
collectible books here. So like like when I'm putting it up on the airplane, I was like, look, there it is. Like but like the whole time I was expecting the zipper just like to rip, and I was like, please just make it to Chicago. Like, and I got
Just
them
get
here.
home.
Well, I
yeah.
always forget every year I should just pack a bigger bag because I almost never leave the show without buying books from this guy. And I've tried to get some of my books in his shop, and I had a good conversation with him about it. But I
Nice.
think,
And this is at San Diego, you said?
yeah, he's
hmm
literally like 5
He's
tables away from us.
His store is based in, if I remember right, Alhambra, California, which it's like
Yes.
that's like
Yeah, you can buy stuff online too. It's there.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's like a subsect of Los Angeles or whatever. But yeah, that's where I've always ordered it online. I never have been in person
It's
to
just
a
nice to
store.
like see it, right? And being like,
hmm
but you have to like be willing to be like, I can't buy all
Well,
this, but I can buy
I mean
this. That.
that's why we go to shows is there's a different experience getting to buy a thing in person.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, definitely.
I think that your book, so like your bookmark sites. I'm gonna branch off of that because I think your idea, you had metal and bookmarks. I think those two things would move really well at Gen Con, and finding
Hmm.
at Dragon Con, it's like a specific like like I move prints and playmats fairly well in the art show, but not as I can't find like that. What's that one magic item like that people want, right? Like playmats are again Gen Con is like one of those shows where people want everything. They're like,
hmm
what's the cool
Yeah.
new thing you got? I want it, right? You can be like, I can't even think of something as a bad example, but you can just make a thing and they want it. DragonCon, they're very specific. People are like, they've got their mind made up on the one thing they want. So like, I was able to move some
Well,
journals, but
I feel like a lot of people do go specifically for art though. Like
when they
I
come to the
feel
art
like
show, they're coming there
my prints
knowing,
did better than they normally do.
yeah. I mean, the art
Um,
show, people come to the art show wanting specific original artwork.
yeah.
You won't find fan art really in the art show unless they worked with like Tom what's his name? I've got like a Sandman piece, but I want
Oh,
he has spoken to Neil Gaiman and worked with Neil Gaiman. So now he's got the Sandman pieces, right? So you won't
Right.
that's how
yeah.
you otherwise you won't find fan art just in there, really. Or you shouldn't anyway. So I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I do remember that was one of
Oh,
the things I really
funny.
enjoyed and was impressed about with Dragon Con was the breadth of the artists that were there.
Yep.
Mm.
Of yeah,
Yeah, that
like
was
a lot, not
I was
just a
gonna
lot of
ask you that. How did you
skill, but a
feel after
lot of
you since this was your first Dragon Con? Like you
uh-huh.
walk in there, you're setting up. Now you decide
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna take a walk and see who else is in here with me. Did that give you any kind of like? Because like my first time at the show, I literally went home that night, and Sasha Jones was my roommate, and thank God for him because I was laying on the couch like I don't belong here. I was
Oh,
like
the
I was like
overwhelm.
I was like I am way out of my depth here. I was like I literally was like, what the fuck are you doing, Panicle? Like you should not. You
There was
are.
a little bit of that. I don't think it was as intense as your experience, but probably primarily because that was how I felt when I got the news that I had been accepted into the main show for IX. But
Nice.
I
oh,
looked at the roster and I was like,
I didn't know that. Oh wait, I
uh-uh,
think
yeah, I
you
didn't
did
uh-uh.
know
post
that.
that. Did you post that? I don't
Not
think I
not
knew that.
publicly online. I think I posted it in like Rusty in the
Okay.
Discord. And then
It's super
unfortunately
easy for that
due
to
to
like,
like,
That probably got washed
surgery
up
and
immediately.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, due to like surgery and stuff. And as I mentioned, I have no originals, and you have to have originals for the main show. So I'm actually not doing it this year, but I'll do
Rolled
it
it.
next
Yep.
year. But yeah, no, but that I know exactly the feeling you're talking about of like looking at that roster, looking at the bodies of work of these
Yep.
artists who have been professionals for decades. And I feel like I am the baby professional. I'm just starting to get some, better clients and stuff. And I'm like, I do, I am not prepared for this.
I mean,
But
I'm shocked that you didn't get work earlier. Your work's from the
oh,
first time I
thank you.
met you, your work's been
I'm
really good.
probably because I'm bad at putting myself out there. I'm
There you go.
bad at doing the
Wow.
cold emails and all that
I'm worse
stuff.
than you.
This guy doesn't even have a mailing list.
The
Or do
mailing
you?
list.
I have one. I have
Okay.
literally never sent an email, but I have one. I have a list.
So Andrew, I think she's worse than you now. So
That might, yeah, I was gonna say that's hard to beat, but that might be.
you do actually what Andrew does is he's very consistent with his Patreon, though, which I have
Ah,
dropped the ball on it so hard I don't even think I can recover.
When I
And
first launched it, I was really inconsistent about it.
when
And
I first launched it, I was very consistent about it.
well, since then, like at the start of this year, I said, okay, I know for a fact if I overpromise myself
Yeah.
mentally, I'm gonna drop the ball. So I said once a
yep.
month for newsletter, and then at least 2 posts a month for a Patreon. If I do more than 2,
Okay.
that's solid. Otherwise, 2 posts, that's the bare minimum. And granted, I'm terrible at marketing it to say like, "Hey, go to here
This
because this is,"
exists.
yeah, this
Right.
exists. So it's been like the same 6 people that initially got in on it or whatever. So, and as far as I know, no one's complained, right, Alan? I don't think you've complained. I don't think
On your
anyone else has
Patreon?
complained.
No.
Yeah. But
Everything
no,
else,
like
pretty much.
nothing I've heard. But yeah, like I also have it like really low stakes. Like I don't really offer
Yeah.
crazy goal like things or anything. Like I know other people offer sun and the moon kind of stuff, and I'm like, no, like what one in $5 things, and everyone gets the same thing. $5 people, I'll send you high res stuff, and
Right.
then if you want, maybe
Right.
down the line I'll do something else. But like if there's like exclusive, if there's like if I ever put out like a sketchbook, I've provided like a PDF download there, or
Sure.
like I made a video last year, 2 years ago for my Wormwood tarot card. I did like a whole process video and stuff, and I offered
Mhm.
that for like people on the $5 thing. I was like, here, if anyone wants to download this, otherwise it's over on Gumroad. If you want to hand it out to someone else to be like, hey, buy this from this guy.
I mean, I'm considering doing kind of like a Patreon style setup on Discord because I hang out on Discord the most.
Yeah, you
Oh.
said that before. Yeah,
I
like
think I was gonna
setting
wait
up
till
as like an
fall and
exclusive
just.
secret thing.
I mean, I'm
I could see
gonna.
that. I do know like Howard Lyon has a Patreon or a Discord that's linked with his Patreon.
Right, so that's what mine
And
is now. If you
that's
sign
that's
up
a
for
pretty
Patreon,
fun community.
I mean, I'd rather. So what I'd rather do is do a small post on Patreon and then push it over to the Discord where I'm like, "Hey, thanks for joining me here," because I live there more, and it's just I hate Patreon's mobile app. It is the biggest pile of garbage.
And I
It's
feel
all
like,
garbage.
yeah, I was
I
gonna
mean,
say
the
if you
desktop
want like
works,
interactions and community, I don't feel like Patreon is very well designed for that.
right?
Yeah.
And I feel like in
Yeah, and
Discord, there's just a little bit of like, I don't know how to describe it. It just feels comfortable,
Mhm.
right? Like it's
No,
easier
it
to
kind of
interact with
feels
people.
like the old internet forums of my youth before the internet kind of went to crap and
Sure.
it's
social media took over and then right.
I very much like the idea of them. I don't think I would like the idea of having to cat herd that myself.
Right.
I think I would rather leave that up to someone else, or just like I don't want to oversee it myself because I know
Yeah, if
it'll
you have someone
be a
who's willing
headache.
to
Well, you
be a
gotta have some
mod for
moderators,
you.
right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing
Yeah.
with the private server. I have moderators who watch, and not all the time. But if I did it, the idea was is like you'd have if you're on a specific tier, I'd have you can have locked channels, and in those channels I would drop like new art, new stories, and then I would have another channel for like projects, right? So you like
hmm
the board games, the RPGs, so on and so forth. So I feel like every time I try to post from on Patreon, I'm so used to my cell phone too, and it's like I can't use my cell phone because the app is just a piece of garbage, and I just get frustrated, and then I'm like, I'm out. Like
It doesn't help that they also still I think they recently implemented something new, but they have a terrible tagging system
great.
that frustrates the hell out of me, where they don't show you all the tags you've made previously. You have to like hunt and peck,
Yes.
go through the
That's
alphabet and
annoying.
guess. Yeah, it is my single
It's
most frustrating thing, and I've sent several angry emails to them about it.
And they have not updated that feature.
They've not updated the best they say is like, "Oh, we're working on something. Don't worry about it. Thank you for your interest." I'm like,
yes,
"You're
that's what
not
they tell
listening to
everybody.
me. Fix it."
We're working on it. Don't worry. And you're like, you're lying.
Yeah.
Because I've complained about
Yeah.
the mobile app. I'm like, hey man, this thing's not saving. I have drafts. One time I lost like 12 drafts. Gone.
Oof,
Oh God.
And then I'm just
that
like, where
sucks.
did they go?
No, this is why mine's been suspended for like most of this year. I was posting really regularly, and then as soon as I got like NDA work and I stopped
Mm.
doing personal work, I was like, I got nothing to post. Sorry, guys.
And then you post old
Um,
stuff. You're like, here's this piece
yeah, I
again.
guess that's true. Um, but yeah, my process essentially became like I'd do my draft in like Google Docs or whatever,
Yep.
and then copy and paste it over.
Yep.
Like I would, because yeah, I lost a draft. Like I'd spent a ton of time editing it and had it nice and perfect, had put a bunch of work into it, and then just gone. And I was
Yep.
like, oh,
So
that's the
yeah.
last time I make that mistake.
And it's like I don't want to do that, right? I don't want to have to type it in one thing, copy paste another thing. If I did it all in Discord, I can use Discord on my phone. I prefer to use it on my desktop, but it's
But
fine
the
on my
mobile is
phone.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the mobile is, it has its moments where it doesn't find a connection, but otherwise it works great. And
True.
I could drop gifts in all day. So
Yes.
Supernatural gifts until the end of time.
it's Shit's
Or
Creek
Schitt's
for
Creek.
me.
Schitt's
I was
Creek
gonna
is
say
Yeah.
Schitt's
yours.
Creek is the
Yeah.
one you primarily use, and man,
That's just because
the
Tanya and
shit.
I love that show.
I need to watch more of it. I watched the first few episodes and
You finished
thoroughly
the whole
enjoyed
thing.
it.
Oh, I was gonna
It's
say, yeah, if you like the first few, it really just gets better from there.
Yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
my
I
favorite
had the
shows.
inverse where the first handful of episodes took me a bit to really get into it, and I want to say like
Sure.
around I think like around episode 5 or 6 is when it
Because you
hooked
gotta
me.
kind of figure out what that show's trying to do.
Yeah, like I wasn't
Right.
turned off by it, but I was definitely like I didn't give it my full attention until
Yes.
about
So you
episode
should watch
5 or
Schitt's
so.
Creek, The Good Place,
Good place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Scrubs.
that's one I still have to watch. Yeah,
Good
Oh,
Place is
do
good.
it. It's
Scrubs.
really
If you haven't
good.
seen Scrubs, ignore the last season because the college years don't exist.
that's a
I think
bad
part
season.
of why I haven't finished or watched all of Schitt's Creek, same reason I haven't watched more Scrubs. I have a hard time sticking with a show if there's not an overarching plot. Like if it's
Mm,
episodic,
Mm-hmm.
I like the story gets wrapped up for the most part within that episode, and then I'm done and happy to move on to other things. But if it's got like an overarching story, then I binge it. And I like can't stop until I finish the story, which is kind of
gotcha.
how I finally finished watching The Good Place, because that one has a good overarching. And
That one took me a minute. That's a show that was also recommended. I think Tawny recommended it to me. Is one of those shows where the first couple episodes I was like, what the hell is happening here? They had
yeah,
some funny things and some stuff I was just
And
like,
a
I don't
lot
get
of weird
this. And a
things.
lot of weird things. I was just like, I'm not sure this is my jam. But then I watched a little bit more. I'm like, okay, you've got my attention. And then I watched the whole thing in like a week. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I watched it essentially 2 different times. The first time I watched it, I got, I think, to the point where they end up in the medium place
Yeah.
and kind of stopped around there. And then the show got finished, and I heard from everybody of like, they did such a good job with the ending. Like, and I was like, okay, I'll give it another go. And so I rewatched it and then watched the whole thing. And yeah,
It gets
good
you
stuff.
got because like
Good
at the
stuff.
end there where it's like I'm not gonna give it away, but there's a point where you're just like, this is getting a little too complicated, and you got like some shows just drop the ball. It's just like we took this too far and we're done.
Yeah, it's
You know.
either like clearly they didn't like quite plan it out and they painted themselves into a corner, or
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
something like that.
Right.
And
Like the
I
Lost
felt
conundrum.
that moment coming from this show. I was like, oh shit, it's about to happen. But then they just did it, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
brilliant.
How many seasons is The Good Place?
Seven,
If I
Five?
remember
five. Oh
correctly, I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
say 5.
I was gonna say that's usually
I mean, I
seems
watched
to
it
be
in a
the
week, so it's pretty bingeable.
that seems to be the sweet
It's
spot
not
for
over.
like how long a TV series can kind of go before the wheels come off it.
Well, that's because like Scrubs is this prime example of they ended it on this like amazing high note, and then some dumb producer was like, "Let's do one more
We can
season."
get more money out of it.
Yeah.
And the actors were probably like, "Yeah, we don't have any other work to do. We might as well act." And
There's also like a weird phenomena that have you ever heard of I only have this in my mind because I was just talking to a friend of mine recently about this. The phenomenon known as homerification or homerification, sorry.
no,
Don't know it.
So okay. Strap in. So,
this
a
better
little
not be like your platypus talk. That's all I'm gonna say.
no. So what it is
Don't
it's
ask
the
him
idea.
about it, Carly.
It's yeah, no, it's a whole other thing. That's a
But I
can
love animals.
You don't want to know
This
this
is
one.
you don't want to know this horror story of animals.
What, that they're venomous?
No,
Oh,
go
it's
ahead and tell us
not
what
even
this word
that.
means.
Okay, sorry. But the
Yeah,
homerification before we
right.
derail
So
everything.
it's the idea of like if the show goes on long enough, eventually what happens is the characters go a character within a show kind of has an arc. They go from like being a one-dimensional figure to eventually being more rounded out and becoming like a full three-dimensional being as the writers figure out the character and write more and more of it.
Right.
And eventually what happens is there's a tipping point where if the show goes on long enough, that character gets reduced back down to like 1 point. And that becomes they become an archetype. That is their thing. So like the term stems from there's a generally agreed upon point where Homer Simpson goes from being a three-dimensional being back down to an archetype, and he stays an archetype from then on. And I have no idea how well either of you know Simpsons
I know
episodes.
Simpsons.
How about you, Carly? Any kind of ish? So this isn't a recent one. This is actually an episode from I want to say the 12th season or so, like around the time like after he had gone to
It
space
should have
and all that.
ended. Yeah, exactly.
So there's an episode where Homer Simpson has a new employee underneath him named Grimes that he calls Grimy. You know where this is going, Alan.
Yeah, I got you. Go ahead.
I have
This
no
guy,
idea, so.
okay, so the character Grimy in this episode, his life is miserable. He's busted his ass his whole life, and for what? He has a walk-in closet for a bedroom for an apartment that lives like underneath the train tracks kind of thing. And this is a guy that like he is busted his ass to just get to where he is, and he's had nothing but misfortune his whole life. They have like a whole like 2-minute like intro regarding his life. The remainder of the episode is him being angry at how easy Homer Simpson has it. And Homer Simpson is blithely clueless as to what is bothering him about this. Like he just doesn't understand it. He's
Like, why does
totally,
he hate me
totally
so much?
exactly. It's like a complete thing. And everyone else in Springfield is also like oblivious as to like why does he have such a stick up his ass over Homer Simpson kind of thing. The climax of the episode ends with Grimes, basically Grimy as he's called by Homer Simpson. He has a mental breakdown, snaps, and he's like, rules don't matter. He's like, look, everyone, I'm Homer Simpson. Rules don't matter to me. Nothing bad's ever going to happen to me. And he starts like just tearing through the nuclear power plant, causing like not mischief, like he's basically like just flaunting safety regulations. And eventually it comes to a point where he's like, oh, I'm going to grab these live power cables because nothing happens to me. I'm Homer Simpson. And as he does that, he grabs it off screen. You see like he clearly got electrocuted and killed, right? And the end of the episode ends with him at a funeral. The only people attending it are like his coworkers because they're the only people that really knew him. And as they're delivering the eulogy, the camera pans over. You see Homer Simpson. He's sleeping through the eulogy. And I guess he's having a dream about television or something because he, at one point, during the eulogy, he calls out in his sleep. He's like, Marge, change the channel. I don't like this show. And everyone laughs. It's like, oh, that's Homer Simpson. And in that instant, Grimes is forgotten. His casket's just lowered down and never heard of again. So the idea is from then on, Homer Simpson stopped being up until that point, you could argue like, yeah, the dude overall is kind of like dumb, but he has his compassionate moments. He has his moments where he realizes like,
Right, like I've seen the do it for her board in
exactly,
his
yeah,
office. Yeah, so
yeah.
he had a little bit of depth.
He had some depth. He had moments where he realized like he fucked up and he had to do the right thing, or he realized like I have to do the right thing for the greater good. You could argue like from the Grimes episode here on out from there, he's not that anymore. He's become
He's back
dumber,
to being a joke.
more mean-spirited, like overall like
Mm.
doesn't really get consequences affected to him, and if they do, they're very quickly resolved. And no one really is, it's not even a matter of like someone's even mildly pissed at him. They're just kind of like begrudgingly like, oh,
It's
that's
just what,
just Homer
yeah, that's just what
Simpson.
he
Yeah.
does. That's an
Yeah.
interesting way to look at it, but it's also funny.
And you could see it like you see it more with like I think cartoons because those are very long season, like
Sure.
multiple season stuff. But I have noticed it with like sitcoms that run on very long, like Cheers or something like that, where
Hmm.
Right.
they do eventually hit a point where a lot of the characters just kind of become like
I
caricatures.
mean, that's what
of
happened with
themselves.
Supernatural, right? Because they should have
Yeah,
stopped at like
exactly.
season.
Yeah, it went on 5 seasons. After the 5th season, it kind of got into this rut of like,
Yep.
okay, what do we do? And
Well,
it's
they made
just
a comment, right? They were like, the
uh,
fans want it, we'll keep making it, which is bad. Because Supernatural fans are
That's the
fanatical.
wrong reason to make it.
Right. Because I like Supernatural, but not at the level some people I've met at shows. And there's a point where they could have stopped it and ended it, but then they thought, all right, let's make a couple more. And then it got to a point where they're like during COVID, where they're like, we just have to finish. And instead of, I still wish they had waited to finish that last season, but they didn't. And it ends not so much the way most of us wanted it to,
Yeah.
right? I still have a hard time with it because I'm just like, that's not the ending I wanted, but I have to accept it for what it is because it's done.
You could just be my wife, where she's like, "It's only 5 seasons," and like I even
I
asked her,
mean,
it's like,
I
"What
still
happens with
think,
the rest?" She's like, "I don't know. I don't care. It's only 5
right.
seasons."
I think it's
I'm like,
still,
oh,
I think all the way up until like 9 or so is still decent, and it's, what did it go till? 9, right, or 12, right?
thought it was
I
like
don't know.
14.
I remember really enjoying the earlier seasons, and I have no idea at which point I stopped watching, but I
Well,
definitely have not watched all of it.
it was the earlier seasons were great because it's just your typical monster hunter story.
Yeah, it was
I thought
fun.
this is great.
Supernatural. Yeah.
Supernatural, right? They're hunting cryptids and they're hunting the ghosts and blah blah blah. But then at some point, the writers were like, "Let's take it on a theological angle," and you're like, "I don't know if this is gonna work."
The
And it
demons
did.
and angels and stuff. Yeah.
But then that became
I
like
think
that
they
became the
kind of did
thing,
that within the lead up to season 5 because that kind of
right? But then that becomes the
tied it
thing,
up.
right?
But then
They're like, "This is now the thing. We're gonna talk about demons and
oh,
angels, and every season they would sprinkle in what you would call like a filler episode, right? Like they'd be like, we're gonna hunt Bloody Mary this time, or we're gonna hunt the Wendigo again, or something stupid, right? And you're like, oh, this is what I really like about the show. And even the theological angle wasn't bad, but then they ran out of ideas, and then instead of stopping and ending it, they were like, how do we keep this thing moving? And then it's just I'm disappointed in how it ended still. And like Tawny's told me several times, like, just kind of like, it is what it is. And I've had discussions with her where she's given me all these examples on why it ended the way it did, and I'm like, yeah, I can see
So
these.
so what I'm hearing is if I ever give it a rewatch, stop at season 5.
That is
mean,
what my wife says.
that's what his
5
wife would
seasons
say.
and you're out.
Like I said,
Cool.
I enjoyed it. I still enjoyed it all the way. Even that last season, I was still like, this is how the show's going. I'm gonna get through this. It's just that last episode, it wasn't the ending I wanted. That's me. It's personal, right? So, but it took me a while to just be like, initially I was pissed for like a week. I was like, what the fuck was that? But then after a while, I was like, bro, you gotta get past this, because it's done. Like, and some fans were pissed because they were like me. That's not what they wanted, right? But I'm not gonna give it away. But Tawny had a really cool thing she said about why it happened the way it happened. I don't know if it was a fan theory or something she came off the top of her head with, but when she said it to me, I was like, that makes sense. I wish they had written it so it makes sense. Like, if you're following that specific theory, you're really expecting the fans to like go backwards and being like, this happened because that happened, and then that happened causing this to happen. And fans aren't. I'm a prime example. I did not think that far back, right? I was living in that moment. So
Yeah.
And it pains me when a show I like that much does something like that. It rarely happens. And Scrubs is an example. Supernatural is an example. But like shows like Schitt's Creek, perfect all the way to the end. Good Place, amazing. And you're just like, even Friends, there's a little bit of like towards the end where you're like, what are you guys doing? Please, just stop. Like, I love this show. You're killing it for me. So now I'm hard pressed to watch shows. Like, when I watch something, I'm just like, I really have to talk to my friends and be like, have you seen it? Is it worth watching? Is it good? Like I'm watching The Bear.
That's
Have you seen The Bear?
Yeah, the Bear's pretty good.
That show is giving me so much fucking anxiety, but it's so good.
Yeah.
I watched it because Sean Murray messaged me one day and said, have you been watching The Bear? I was like, no. What is it? He goes, it's filmed in Chicago. I'm like, all right, you got my attention.
It's gonna keep giving you anxiety. Hate to tell you.
Yeah, I just closed. I'm one episode away from closing out the first season, and that second to last episode, like you could feel the stress of working in that environment. Because I used to be a barback. There was a whole summer side story here, where when I first moved to the city, I had a lot of debt, and to pay off that debt, I worked 3 jobs, two different bars as a barback, and at the comic book store. The deal at the comic book store was I got paid plus comic books. But
nice.
the bar, when I was working at the bar, there were days where they'd be like, hey, go take an order at that table. Hey, go do this. And like, just, you got to learn the shorthand for however they're doing it. And I don't remember any of it now, but that episode gave me that, when they're like 2 hot dogs all day or whatever the thing is. I was just like,
yeah, it's like whatever the lingo is.
I was like, you're going to get through
gave you
this.
some like PTSD.
I mean, I got through it because the show is written so well. It's not even like, I like shows like this because it's not like a wildly like, I've been watching Silo as well on Apple TV, which is amazing. Stephen King recommended it one day, and I was like, I'll give this a whirl because it's Stephen. Stephen and I are like this, we're not, but either way. I've talked about a book you recommended. The book was amazing. So the show but Silo is like a different level. It's like high, like fiction or high fantasy. And, you have to make sure you plot point it right and do it right. The Bear is still written just as well, but it's not like, I don't know how to describe it. It's simple but good. Like any one of us who worked in that environment probably could have written the series if we really wanted to, but it's probably not as simple as I'm making it sound. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, good writing is like
Yeah.
that.
Exactly. Like my kid watches this show called Blippy, and it's literally this
Oh,
dude dancing and
Jesus,
singing,
Lippy.
and it's whatever. She loves it, right? And I was talking to my buddy about this, and I was like, we could have written this show. We both know how to play instruments, but we're not thinking about writing kids songs, dressing up like goofy characters, and dancing. Like it's the farthest thing from our head. I've researched this guy. He basically, the new Blippy is not the original Blippy, which pissed off parents apparently because kids can't tell the difference, right?
But
Uh,
the parents could.
but the parents
Yeah.
could. So it turns out the guy who originally created it was like, I'm tired of being this character, probably because he's a crazy person, and he sold it to this studio that has continued to make a lot more. He apparently got a really good royalty deal, but he sold it for, guess how much he sold it for?
I don't
Take a
want to
random
think about
guess.
it because it's a YouTuber that got like really big on this. So I'm gonna say uh he sold it to a media company maybe for like 7 mil or 700 mil. Higher.
I was gonna say if a few million was
1.2
gonna be
billion.
my guess. So
Apparently, and I don't know if the number is correct or not. He apparently sold it for 3 billion.
Jesus. I mean,
That's apparently how much money
he
this
is
thing is generating.
I was gonna say he is like one of the
wow.
biggest stars regarding that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, but like, so that's just an example of like, and the Bear is a good example. Like where I watch this show, and I'm thinking, you worked in this environment, right? Like, if you wanted to, you could probably write something like this, but can I? Probably not, because I'm not a writer. So I like that, right? It feels like I don't want to like insult it, but it just feels like it wasn't like the show itself is also only like 3 sets, right? 4 sets. It's really all in that one restaurant, which is
yeah.
what I like about Schitt's Creek and what I like about The Good Place, because you're not like jumping all over the place. Silo's the same. It's all in this one giant fucking silo, which is insane. But
Hmm.
the writing is what moves it, right? That makes sense.
Yeah. No, I totally get it.
So you should watch Silo.
Car I'm curious to see it. I'm kind of waiting for All Mankind to start back up later in November, and then we'll probably rent like Apple TV for like a month or two, something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, Carly, I wanted to go back to like Dragon Con because I
Yeah.
like got way off the weeds and stuff.
Yeah, we really went off on a tangent there. I told you that was going to happen.
That's fine.
Welcome to the show.
I was kind of curious, like how many new fans of your work did you run into at Dragon Con, and then like what prints did you end up bringing?
So prints I ended up bringing, I mean, primarily my personal work, um, the portfolio pieces I've done over the last few years. There's one piece I have titled She Spins Stars that is not in my portfolio anymore, but I've been bringing it to shows because people like it at shows. It's a dancer with a spiral galaxy as her tutu.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen that one before.
Yeah, and it's one of those, like, even if they don't buy it, that one in particular tends to get a lot of people going, "Oh, I love that," and stopping at the booth. Um, yeah, new fans though, I don't know. I mean, people stopped and chatted. I probably got a bunch of new follows on Instagram, but I really haven't been paying attention to social media this year, so
How about your mailing
I,
list?
I, I don't have
I
actual metrics for you. Is I guess the answer is
yeah.
it's a
Did
good
people?
question, and I don't know.
Did you get people on your mailing list?
Uh, no, but that's primarily because I figured I should probably start actually using the mailing list and sending out a newsletter before I
Sure.
collect more.
Well,
So,
just collect them.
so next year.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely thinking of doing Dragon Con again? I
I'd
take it this
like
was a very
to.
good success.
I don't see any reason why you won't get in.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would like to do it again, if only so that I can experiment, right? So that I can iterate of the like, after observing the show and you know, getting lots of good feedback from my peers of like, okay, these are the things I'd like to try differently, and then see if that helps and makes for a better show or not. It is far, which is a challenge, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
but it
two
does
time
feel
zones
like
for you, right?
mhm,
I mean,
yeah.
Melissa was trying to convince me to go to Chattanooga? Like, go to Chattanooga, spend the night there, and then drive the rest of the way. And I'm just like, no,
Oh, I
man,
was gonna say like
I'll do it in one day. My friend Skates and I just cook it out, and like I started
that's
at
like
4:30 in the morning.
I was gonna say that's like a 16-hour drive for you, right, Alan?
It's 12. It's actually 12, but with stops, it's about 13 or so. So we
Yeah.
left
Okay.
at well here. So we left
Yeah,
at
a long day, but doable.
it's an hour ahead too, I believe, right from here.
Yes, you're
So
central and
Yes.
Atlanta's
yeah,
eastern.
so I started at 4:30 in the morning. I go get Skates. He lives in Chicago by 5, and then we just start driving, and then we get to our buddy Stewart's place around 6:30, and it all depends on. We were drinking a lot of caffeine, so we had to make a couple stops to use the bathrooms, but
Yeah.
otherwise, it would go if we didn't have to. When we make food stops, we actually sit and eat in the car. We don't just drive and eat. Right? We're just like, let's just chill for a second. Let's eat this meal.
Mm.
Go. Um,
I normally do the drive and eat if I'm doing a long.
I could do the drive and eat if it was like a shorter trip, but for the long trips, I was just like, let's just take the
Get out of the
15.
car for a minute.
Yeah, stretch our. Well, we go to the bathrooms and we grab some food, and it's always usually fast food, so it's always like, what do you want to eat? Where that may or may make you sick in the car, right? If you like, I'm
Right.
not gonna eat like a Wendy's Baconator, like
Oh, the big that's
I'm gonna fall
Jack in
asleep
the
while
Box.
driving, Um, it's
Yeah,
just
and that's the thing. I don't know. I tend to prefer driving over flying if I can, especially if I'm transporting originals, because shipping
Yeah.
originals makes me nervous and it's expensive. But man, if I were to drive to Dragon Con, it would be a week of driving because it would be 3 days out and 3 days back.
oh wow,
It's like
okay.
it's like 30 hours. So it'd be 3 10-hour days.
Jesus
That's a
And
Christ.
lot of driving.
it's a lot of driving. So that is the one thing that might keep me from doing Dragon Con consistently is just it's a little far for me.
I get
But
that. I- Yeah, I I'm a wimp when it comes to driving, so for me driving up to Atlanta is like 9 hours if I remember right.
well, that's
Ooh,
nothing.
that's
Yeah, it is
nothing.
it is really nothing. I have
I
been
wish it was 9.
I've been conditioned by Florida where you can't seem to escape the state unless you
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of driving. Like
Mm.
I'll put it this way, like I'm always really excited whenever I'm up in the Northeast, either like visiting family or like going to a LuxCon or
Oh,
like
because the
something like
states
that.
are so small.
Exactly. So like if I drive like 4 hours, I'm like 3 states over. Or if I'm not 3 states over, then I've like done a crazy like mountain trip, and I'm like, this is amazing.
Oh, and
Uh,
see, for me, yeah, you mentioned it takes forever to get out of Florida. That's my norm. Western states are big. Like
yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
first day is Wyoming, and you get a start on Nebraska. Like that's it.
No
Yeah.
thanks. I thought about driving to San Diego a couple times just because I want to bring like the bigger
More
setup,
stuff. Oh
but
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
just 22 hours. There's no way to do it in one. It would be 3 days at least. There's no
You,
way.
you know what? Like,
You could do it
excuse
in
me.
two.
Here's
It
the
would
thing
it
though.
would be a
Also, with San
grueling two
Diego,
days.
you can't just wheel your stuff unless like the setup I have now there, I can just wheel stuff in the suitcases and set up in the banners. But if I were to bring like my pro panels and all that, I probably would have to go to the marshalling yard where the union guys have to wrap it up and you have to wait.
I
Blah
was gonna
blah
say
blah.
the Teamsters have to move it and stuff,
Oh, it's
right?
such a every time I
Oh,
work with Dave,
wait.
it's such a clusterfuck. So whenever I worked with Dave Seeley at San Diego, we'd have to be in
Uh-huh.
there's a whole setup in the back where you have to like grab a crate or a pallet, put all your stuff on the pallet, wrap it up, put your booth information on it, and then you just go wait. They'll bring it to your booth at some point.
Wait, is Dave Seeley who I'm thinking about? He seems. I'm surprised. I was thinking San Diego wouldn't be a good fit for me because my experience has been the pop culture kind of and comic focused shows. Like
It's
the
San Diego
the
Comic Con.
fantastical realism I do doesn't have an audience there. But Dave Seeley,
He does like
uh,
enough covers of like sci-fi and other things that
He's done a
I
lot of
think
stuff with
that's
that's
LucasArts.
true.
yeah.
But
Okay.
either way, we're
Oh
actually
yeah, if he's done a lot for Lucas, that makes sense.
we're a little
I
over
guess
time.
I'm used to seeing him, or I was introduced to his work at IX, and it's all
Yeah,
his like fine arty stuff and the
Yeah.
figures.
that's
So
what he
that's what I
brings
was
to the
imagining.
show.
I'm like,
He's got a big
that
setup
does
at
well at
San Diego
Comic
with
Con,
all the stuff.
really?
Well, he
Actually, yeah.
sells like the LucasArts stuff. Obviously, sells. Star Wars sells. It's Comic Con, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But then he has these like giant posters that he was. I still remember. This working that booth was the thing that basically gave me an idea to make the big metals part of it because he would be selling these giant
Oh,
posters. They were huge, and I was just like, nobody's gonna buy that poster. It's so goddamn big, and people just kept buying them, and I'm
mhm.
just like, all right, this seems to be a thing because people would be, I'd be
Yeah.
like, where are you gonna hang this thing? And they were huge. They were like, oh, I can't remember the dimensions. I want to say they were like one was like almost like 8 or 9 feet long, right? I think, and
Yeah.
he would just clip them and they would hang. And one guy was like, "I'm just gonna frame it and hang it in my living room." I'm just like,
Wow. Well, I'm pretty sure she always does San Diego. Heather Edwards, their booth is the Dog and Dragon. She has the beautiful oil paintings of the like Disney stuff,
"Oh
and
yeah,
of course along with her originals as well. But yeah, she has like a bunch of larger canvases, and she'll often do, you know, textural work on top of it so that it's a hand touched print. And I remember when I guested with them
Hmm.
a couple times, those big pieces, they moved surprisingly well for her. Like she moved those big things.
I mean, it's just like Gen Con, right? People come to this show with money. That's what it boils down to."
Actually, yeah, that was something I was kind of curious because I think I'm in the very much the same boat as you, Carly, where I don't feel like my artwork does terribly well at like comic
Hmm.
conventions.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I decided to stop doing MegaCon. Excuse me, even though it's like local to me and I can like drive to it in like
Yeah, I don't do
30 minutes or so.
FanX, and it's literally like 10 minutes from me. So,
Yeah, and it's just because I went to it enough times. I was like, this really, I'm like I'm fish out of water here on
mhm.
this.
That's the yeah for local shows. It's like you want the local shows to be good for you, and when they're not, you're like, well, this
Yeah.
sucks.
So like
Yep.
for you, like Gen Con and Dragon Con then were pretty well receptive to your
I think
genre of
so.
art.
I think for especially for a first year, um, like it wasn't stellar and amazing sales wise, but it was good enough that if it continues to improve year by year, then it will definitely be worth it in the long run.
It will improve
And
for you once people get.
yeah,
You gotta
and
let
and
them.
that's just the direct stuff, right? Then you've got all the indirect benefits.
Hmm.
Where that last morning at Gen Con, I did go around to some of the exhibitor booths and had a couple of wonderful conversations with some art directors. Don't know if anything will come of it, but at the very least, had a great conversation. And like the guesting at or getting to be a guest artist at the Fantastic Arts workshop this coming summer. That
That's
was
cool.
Oh
because
yeah, I forgot.
that happened after Gen Con, where Jeff stopped at my booth and got to meet him in person finally and had a great conversation, and he bought a drawing.
Nice.
So yeah, I think if only for that, like, again, I had mentioned earlier the like in-person experience.
Mm.
Even if sales aren't huge, the other benefits and the getting to spend time with my peers and connect with them and get information and feedback from them and all of that jazz. It's really nice to be able to do that in a more natural environment face to face
Mhm.
rather than, I mean, online is great. Don't get me wrong. That's how I met you, was through the internet.
Mhm.
You think you
But
met me?
in person is special.
Yeah.
It is nice. That's one of the reasons I really like LuxCon for that reason.
Hmm.
Yeah, my first experience at Lux, I was like, oh my god, all the people I want to talk to are right here.
Yep.
So it's
Mhm.
kind of nice.
Actually,
Well,
Alan, I was gonna say the first time I went to a LuxCon, like 2012, that was like when it was in Allentown. I had that exact same reaction you had when you first went to Dragon Con. Like the first day
dude,
at LuxCon, I was like, "What
the level
am I
of
doing
anxiety
here?"
I had
Yeah.
in my hotel room that night, like Sasha was the one who was like, relax. Like it hasn't even started. Like you're assessing it from an angle of like you obviously did well enough to get to this point. They obviously like your work because you juried in. So just let's see where it goes. And I pretty much sold everything I brought with at that show.
Nice.
So
That's awesome.
and I made a bunch of friends. Like Jeffrey McDonald, who you've probably met at LuxCon. He was next to me, him and his wife, and that's how I became
Mm.
friends with him. Because the whole show, I was like, "This is my first time here," and I was super nervous and just chatting it up with him. So we became friends. But yeah, that's a very real feeling that I think artists have, and it's like there's no easy way to be like, don't think that way. You gotta like get through it.
Hmm.
It's just gonna happen, and you just gotta like push through it. And some people don't, unfortunately, but the larger
Well, that
percentage do.
was, yeah, I mean, to this day, I still remember, so kind of what set me on this career path. Dan Dos Santos came and did a workshop in Utah with Howard Lyon. And I remember there was an evening where Dan did like a lecture at BYU, and then we went and walked around the art museum afterwards. And I got to be kind of a little fly on the wall and walk behind Dan and Howard and listen to them chat. And they were talking about like their fears and insecurities and the like looking at these museum paintings and going like, ah, why don't I paint like that? And
Hmm.
all those sorts of things. And it was this big aha moment for me of like, these guys that have been working in this industry for years, and I so look up to them, and they have the exact same fears I do.
Yep.
And that was when it clicked of like, oh, the fears don't ever go away. You just keep doing the work in spite of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we all feel them. Like it's not just me,
Right.
it's everybody.
It would be weird if you met someone who's like, I'm not. I'm never nervous. You'd be like, you lying, or you're on
You
drugs.
lying, or you're I was gonna say, or you've got something else going on in your
Right.
psychology.
Arrogant
Arrogant. Yeah. All right.
is
So
the
we're a
most
little over
important.
time now, so we can
Oh,
move to the last segment if you want,
yeah,
which is
sure.
showing off something cool that you want to talk about. I got two things, but I don't know which one I should show yet.
Start with
Okay.
one and then we can loop around.
Yeah.
So the one thing I was gonna show was a board game, which is I got this big King of Tokyo monster box gifted to me. Basically, it's basically got
Oh,
all
nice.
the If you play King of Tokyo,
It looks
I
familiar.
played it once.
so it's
I feel like
basically
my spouse
this
has
is
it.
Tokyo Bay, and then you're kaiju, and then you can win by either defeating all the other kaiju out, or I think you earn points. I forget the secondary step to win, but you roll dice, and you get like energy cubes, and then you can buy specific cards that task the creature for doing so. I'm amazed my fingers actually pointing the right places just by looking at the camera. So, but like this pack comes with so it's got like there's a power up expansion and then a Halloween expansion. These are all things you buy separately, but this is the big box. So I was gifted this for trading some art, basically. So it's kind of nice. I didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Um,
Trades are always fun.
Trades are
I
always
enjoy
fun.
trades.
Trades are always the
It's
best.
one of my favorite games. If you've never played King of Tokyo, I would highly suggest you invest in it. It's worth every dollar. every penny. I don't know why I said every dollar, but
I only got to play it once, but I did
my
did
second
enjoy it. It was
favorite,
pretty
yeah.
fun.
So that's like a base fun type game, but if you want a little more serious game, my second favorite game is Betrayal at the House on the Haunted Hill.
Love Betrayal. Betrayal's a good one.
We
The
have that.
expansion pack was disappointing.
Yeah, that was disappointing.
We
Yeah,
have
not
it.
as well balanced.
My wife has been trying to get the adults that live near us together to do a session, but we all have kids now. So our
Yeah.
usual
Oh.
gaming party, it's like, what the fuck do we do? So now we're like, why
Topple.
don't we just? They're all about the same age, so it's like, why don't we just all like bring them over to somebody's house and let them like go crazy in one room, and we'll just play our game in the other room.
Have the kid room and the adult room.
Exactly. Yeah,
much.
they're in their like 4s, 5s. They're about they could
They
start
can
doing that.
keep themselves entertained.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's worth a shot.
I'll show the other thing when you circle back to me, maybe.
Okay. There was something else I was gonna share when you were at whatever it was, I can't remember it right now, but it was at it was like when you were at Dragon Con. So I was
Sure.
like, okay, like when we come back, I'll have to mention this, and I can't remember it off the top of my head now. It was not Dave the Diver, I promise.
I was gonna say if it's Dave the Diver,
And it
I'm sleeping.
wasn't related to your desk, I'm assuming, because that was pre-recording that we were
Oh
talking
yeah, no,
about art desks.
that desk is a pre-pandemic era construction. No, oh gosh, what was it? Was it a movie? Might have been, but I can't remember off my head. So I'll say like I saw the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem one.
I haven't seen that yet. Is it good?
It's really good. My daughter really liked it. She really enjoyed
You
it.
saw it in the theater or like on?
No, they have it on Amazon now, so we rented it.
All right, I'll have to get on that.
Yeah, we were curious, so we made a night of it, like on like Friday night or something like that.
That's
and
cool.
Really, it turned out really good. I'm really loving like all the new CG or all the new animated outfits that are just being like, yeah, we don't have to do the Pixar Disney look anymore. We can go beyond
I
that.
like that like rough look it has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can explore and play and do different things.
It's really feeling like it's finally getting out of that it's getting out of that phase where we were trying to get the legs sorted on this medium of like 3D animation, and now it feels like we know what to do with it. Here's everything we can do with it now. So now it's like, let's start breaking shit and see what happens. And it's like, yeah, that's great. That's a fun time. Movies got really good when that happened back during like live action stuff. I'm excited to see what happens with like CG animated films.
I'm with you. I love it when things embrace the medium and do things that you can only do in that medium. I feel like Scott Pilgrim is actually a really good example of that, where the comic, amazing, the video game, amazing, the movie, amazing, and they're all wildly different. And it's because they all took the same core story and then went, we're not going to try to recreate the comic book. We're just going to make an awesome movie and do crazy movie crap with it.
Yeah.
And it worked so well.
There's like, I'm waiting for video games to do it or to embrace it more. There's like, there's a few standouts that have played with the ideas or like done things where it's like, yeah, this is only game stuff. But yeah, for the most part, like video games, I'm still waiting for them to get past that weird stage where they're like, I feel like we're getting close to it, because now it's like graphics aren't going to get any better really than what they are now unless it's like real life fidelity. And I don't see
which they just keep getting closer and closer to.
They keep getting closer to it, but then it's like it's a diminishing returns on it, where when I think about like the 360 PS3 era of video games, like you had a lot of AAA video games that did a lot of neat and interesting ideas while still being a AAA game. Like oh my god, Dead Rising. I remember that being the standout, where it's like that was a Capcom game, and at the time it was like, holy shit, look, we could fit like 100 people on screen at once. This is amazing. And we're gonna do this zombie game with it. And I feel like you don't see that anymore with new modern day AAA games. It's more like
Hmm.
they
Yeah, there's always
excuse
a
me.
few enemies on screen, but not a bananas
It's more
amount.
like they do like corridor shooters, or you end up in like the Naughty Dog scenario. Not to really knock Naughty Dog too much, even though I'm not a big fan of their games, but you either have I feel like AAA games either do like one of three avenues now. They either do like corridor shooter like your Call of Duty or whatever, or they do like the Naughty Dog thing where it's like we're gonna treat the game as a film. And it's like, okay, but film,
Right.
film's a film. So why are you doing this? Because it's not adding anything outside of being like a film that I have to press buttons to keep watching.
Mhm.
Or the third one is like they just say like open world, and then just have like a dollar sign next to it because they think that'll just print money for them.
Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it does, but I feel like even that's like kind of getting to a point where a lot of people are like, "Oh Jesus Christ, another like 60-hour fucking
Right.
open world game. What do I want to do?" So
Not
I,
play that
I'm
game for 60 hours.
I'm curious for like I'm seeing a lot of indie games like do neat things. I'm waiting for AAA games to like
Yeah.
swing back into that and be like, let's get weird. Let's do
Dude, I'm
something weird.
telling you, man. Sea of
I don't
Stars.
see
Sea
them
of
getting
Stars.
weird though, if only because I feel like this is the thing with the bigger titles, the AAA titles, is they're a business and and it takes so much money and resource to make that kind of game that they want a guaranteed return. So they're going to do what they know works. And
Yeah.
getting weird is all about taking a risk
Right.
and you don't know if it's going to work
I
or not. So
so
it's the indie games that are going to be the risk takers and be willing to do the weird stuff.
it's it's crazy because like a part of me feels like it's gonna end up being very similar to like the Hollywood studio collapse that
Mm.
Right.
happened, and then like you had people like Scorsese and Spielberg and Lucas come out of that wreckage, and they became what they became. Um, and the current movie studios seem like they're about to have a repeat of that. Uh, I keep hoping that's going to happen with video games as well, but also I feel like if they do, like you said, like they have a guarantee thing. Like I feel
Hmm.
like if the big AAA studios leave, it's not going to do the same thing. It's probably just going to be like people will be like, "Oh, well, that's the end of that fad." In
Right.
my head, I'm like, I'm worried that like it'll just kind of revert back to being like how the Atari crash happened, where everyone was
Mm-hmm.
like just wrote off video games after that. And was like, well, that was a failed venture. Let's never do this again because I don't know if like indies could support uh the consoles the way that like the bigger AAA video games do, or like draw
No, I
in
think the
the
Maybe.
smart
brand
play for
like
indie games is what
like
they're
that.
doing with like Steam and stuff. They just make it, put it on that platform.
Right, but
Yeah.
then you run into the thing of like that's only a PC, and you figure like
Well, you can. A lot of companies have been converting, right? So like, they make it for indie, and they convert it for like stuff like Switch.
they
Mhm.
do, but that's also like a money and time thing, and
Sure.
some of them do have that, but then there are some that like can't do it whatsoever, and you may see that with like some of them, but yeah, I wonder, I wonder, but
I don't know.
yeah,
It'll be interesting to witness.
I don't know either. But yes, that's my long-winded ways to say that Mutant Mayhem was awesome.
Carly,
Oh,
did you
my
have
thing.
something or?
I think the only thing I have is probably I've been enjoying reading The Expanse. I
Oh
just
yeah.
started the third book.
Oh, yeah.
Loved, loved, loved the second book. Probably because the two characters that were introduced in that book, I'm gonna butcher her name. Avasarala, the
Mm.
Yeah, the senator.
politician, the little Indian grandma with a foul mouth. Love her to death. Maybe because my friends always joke that I'm an old lady since I go to bed at like 9 o'clock and I have a bird feeder and I've got granny vibes. So badass grandma, definitely made me happy. And then Bobby was also a total joy. And I'm actually a little sad that the third book, that those characters don't seem to be in it yet.
They're there.
I'm
You'll see.
Yeah, my friend says they do return, which is good because yeah, I started reading. I'm like, I miss Bobby. I
Yeah,
want
they
Bobby to come
Bobby's a
back.
badass, man.
Bobby's a badass. I love Bobby. Anyway,
Cool.
so yeah, that's been fun. That's probably the thing I've been geeking out about lately is reading those.
I'll have to.
I've been
It's
wanting
on
to.
my
I've been wanting
list.
for a while. Yeah.
I still got to get through.
I know. I almost want to rotate my computer. I've got stacks of books to be read all over my
It's just
my
welcome to all of
mantle and
us.
stuff. So yeah, I resonate with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap us up because we're at an hour and a half now. Just to play it safe. You know what
Well,
happens sometimes.
Well, wait, real quick, signing off then.
Yeah.
Carly, where can we find you online?
Oh, finding me online. If you go to, we talked about newsletters. As I mentioned, I haven't sent one out, but if you go to carlymilligan.com, you can sign up for it. I'm also active on Facebook under Carly Milligan and Instagram, Carly Milligan. Twitter's dead to me. Testing out Blue Sky. We'll see if
Yeah.
it goes anywhere. So yeah, pretty much Carly Milligan, Milligan. You can find me wherever.
Cool. And Alan?
ancientones.net or AllenPanakal.com. It'll reroute or redirect. AllenPanakal are everywhere except TikTok. Exactly.
Except TikTok.
Because that guy is still squatting
that
on my
guy's
name.
squatting on it, and
I swear to God. So I'm gonna my goal is to just generate so much money and become famous, just so I can put a hit out on this guy. Just be like, give me my goddamn name, asshole.
Oh my goodness. And I can
I'm
be
just
found.
kidding. In case that ever happens to him, I was totally joking.
It's like not an actionable threat.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
This is a
Totally
joke.
joking. I don't have
Yeah.
that kind of money.
I can be found at asidesart.com or patreon.com/asidesart. Sign up for the newsletter or the Patreon.
Solid. Thanks for being on, Carly. I hope it was
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
not too much pressure.
Nice chat.
We'll talk about something more fun next time on the Dragon Con, because that is just a show. We used to talk about specific topics, so next time we'll pick something. All right, I'm gonna sign us off. I don't think. Oh, you know what? So I talked to our next guest might be Milena, whose artist name is Voidbug.
Okay.
I met her at
Cute.
OhioCon. I've met her a couple times, her and I became a little bit better friends at OhioCon, and I asked her if she wanted to be on the show. So that'll probably be our next guest.
Sounds good.
Oh,
Awesome.
I'm gonna take us offline. Give me a second.